Back in 2024, when Dragon Ball Sparking Zero was released, I made a video on some offbeat choices I wanted to see make the roster, and since that game got such little content after that, I assumed it was time to pack it up. But with the announcement of the Neo expansion for the game, the hype is back, and I wanted to once again talk about some weirdos from the series that have little chance to make the roster, but I might as well make my pitch. For the record, I love goofiness, so expect a lot of dumb picks here. I'll also be excluding any characters for my 2024 list since my arguments for them still stand, outside the few that actually made the DLC. Long-time viewers know I've been campaigning for launch to be playable in any game for years, but I'd just be making the same points here. So check out that video if you want to hear more, or if you just want to hear more Dragon Ball talk in general. I have plenty of other Dragon Ball and fighting game videos for when you're done here. We're close to getting 100,000 subs on this channel, so new subscribers are always appreciated alongside likes and comments. Now, let's power through my top 10 odd characters for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero Neo. Number 10, Copy Vegeta. This is definitely a number 10 entry since he is such a nothing new character, but I have two reasons. One, he barely requires them to make anything new, so why not? He's just the result of the superhuman water stealing Vegeta's power and taking his form, so they would just have to take the Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta model, turn him purple, and copy-paste some attacks. He used the Gallic Gun and secret technique Super Energy Volley, so that's his two bigger blast supers, and you could probably do regeneration and some paralyzing technique with his goo as his smaller blasts. Maybe some of his melee strings could be unique with his seldom seen water tentacles, and his ultimate could be one of the specific assaults against Goku in their fight. But in a game that reuses assets all the time to make the roster as big as possible, why not do one more character this way? The second reason I like him is, since he was an evil clone, the dub had him voiced by Brian Drummond, and to old school Dragon Ball fans, that needs no further explanation on why that's hype. But for those who don't know, the original English dub of Dragon Ball Z had the voice cast contracted to the Canadian Ocean Studios, and Drummond was Vegeta's first English voice. Even to non-fans, he's known as the voice that delivered the "over 9,000" line for the meme. When that dub was cancelled and later picked back up, Funimation did all the voices in-house in Texas now, so Vegeta was voiced by Chris Sabat, who has voiced the character in English ever since. And the point is, the evil clone Vegeta here got to be voiced by the original English Vegeta, so it would be cool to see Drummond get to do another Vegeta performance in this game. Other than that, not much to see with this character, so enjoy one more character with a cool voice on the roster. Number 9, the Pirate Robot. The Pirate Robot is one of those enemies that felt like it had a full moveset out of the gate, and you could cheese how strong it is now since robotic creatures in Dragon Ball ended up being surprisingly durable if you say they're enhanced with Red Ribbon or Capsule Corp technology. I know he was just an old pirate guard robot, but we can say he was rebuilt for this game by one of those organizations. Even though the Pirate Robot was just a side impediment for both the heroes and the Red Ribbon Army, something about him was so memorable. I think I just liked the whole pirate aesthetic of the area where the General Blue chase occurred, so this unexpected fight for Goku has enough peril and cool tech for me. First off, he has a sword for generic melee, and he has his 3 projectile-based weapons right off the bat: machine gun, electrical tail, and flamethrower. You can make 2 of those his stronger blasts and 1 an ultimate, or make one of those a weaker blast, like the electrical tail is a stun blast, and then save some sort of cutscene barrage for his ultimate. Toriyama robot designs are so fun, so I feel like there's a lot of creativity with the look of this potential moveset, and with it being the first time a xenomorph was referenced in the series, he could at least have a funny intro dialogue with third form Frieza. In the end, he may be a simple enemy, but I see a lot of potential with the weapons he's packing. Number 8, Kochin. I have no idea why I like Kochin so much, but I've always felt like he could be playable in a fighting game. He's a lead villain in the World's Strongest movie, and he rarely ever gets recognition since he's not a giant brain. I just think he's neat. He's a robot old man that has a nice ugly look to him. Looks kinda like a Yu Yu Hakusho character. His moveset would be pretty projectile based, since the 2 main things he had were his cane that fires a laser and his hand that was a machine gun, so 2 beam supers. His ultimate could be summoning his Bio Warriors and they do a big team up as he laughs, like when they dominated against Roshi, or to save them some budget on models, they could just make them his Bio Men, since all they'd have to do is recolor and add a few details details to a Cyberman model and then multiply it a few times. Just create a new cutscene where they restrain the opponent like they did on Bulma, and boom, you got a moveset. If Cooler and Bojack get their top henchman playable, why not Dr. Wheelo too? Number 7, Chi-Chi. Come on Bandai, give us Chi-Chi. There's enough support. People agree her fighting potential is underrated, and you put Nam in the game now, and Tournament Chi-Chi was definitely around the power range of Nam. We also had Kid Chi-Chi in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, so we've already gone weaker in the past. I let it slide initially when there was very little OG Dragon Ball representation in Sparking Zero, but now that you've opened the floodgates, you might as well put End of Dragon Ball Chi-Chi in there. She's a competent fighter who mainly lost because she was still at the level of the first tournament arc fighters and had none of the mysticism yet. Plus she had to fight the eventual tournament winner. Get her a time machine and she'll dominate in those older tournaments, and some of the future tournaments. For strikes and rush supers, you can incorporate her rushes that she attempted to do against Goku, and mix in some moves from when she was training Goten and brainwashed by the Blackwater Mist to fight Gohan. And of course, they can just make up some rushes that fit in character. I also like how in her only playable fighting game appearance as an adult in Super Dragon Ball Z, she was using the Bancho fan, which seems like a great melee weapon and tool in this game for some wind-based blasts. Her kid self was also using it to throw ki in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, so the idea was there. Final note, in my good bad filler list, I mentioned that Chi-Chi liked stocking up on guns in filler scenes when she claimed that she could take on the villains, and I also said that I should be suggesting a bullet spray super for her when I recommend her for fighting games. So yeah, let's do that. Put that somewhere in this moveset. The prophecy has been fulfilled. Number 6, Legic. I think it's baffling that Legic never got a shot in one of these games. Granted, Rildo never did either, and he was a much greater enemy in that arc of Dragon Ball GT, and he was on my first Sparking Zero list, but still, Legic felt like the first boss antagonist from the Black Star Dragon Ball arc. The scam artist, Don Key, has a bunch of bodyguards, with the head guy being Legic. I feel like I'm supposed to take him as a serious badass, but he's still pretty funny with his comedically oversized human ears. His fighting style involved swords and energy, but the energy was red, so even if he gets stock moves on that attack strategy, it'll look visually appealing, and his energy volley was one-handed, so not totally stock animations there. But the bigger appeal is his double sword technique. As always, I think sword swings and melee strings is a no-brainer to make a character neat to play. He also creates them by pulling spikes out of his body that form the blades, which is an underrated skill in the series. Garlic Jr.'s henchmen did that in the Dead Zone movie, and I almost suggested them for this list solely because that is one of the most badass ways to unsheath your sword. Luckily, Legic is a more notable character to take that spot. For how he uses them, it's your standard sword slashing style, but the dual blades enable some interesting potential for cutscene supers, and make skills like the sword ki barrage produce more at a time if he even has that skill. Also, alongside the aforementioned Garlic Jr. guys, he was the only dual sword wielder in the series, which is crazy to think about. I did a video on sword fighters in Dragon Ball, and even the most reality-breaking fighters liked their single sword, so good on Legic for innovating. One thing that kinda diminished his swords is Goku just snapped both of them with ease once the fight got going, so it made Legic look a bit more bark than bite. However, he doesn't need to worry about that happening in this game. Legic ends his fight by leaving on his own laurels and quitting the henchman life, so maybe Sparking Zero can give us an official end to his fight with Goku. Number 5, Ninja Murasaki. The Murasaki fight was so fun in Dragon Ball. Being no match for Kid Goku, I feel like it might be a lost cause requesting him, but I have a couple of ideas to feasibly make him more resilient against some stronger characters, and just skills that would look neat in a fight. For base melee, he can of course swing his sword and has shuriken to throw, plus he has some after image capabilities. He also has those tatami mats and camouflage that could be used as his way of dodging attacks. And is that an actual American flag he used, or just a flag that looks strikingly similar since America in any form doesn't technically exist in the Dragon Ball universe? His big gimmick though is his copy technique, where he seemingly summons clones to gang up on the opponent that are actually just his identical brothers. This would be great for some general melee and a cutscene blast, but for a unique way to give him more health, one of his brothers could essentially take over when his health lowers to a certain level and the previous one gets knocked out. This is mostly just for visuals to explain why his health bar is higher than it should be, but if they wanted to use it for some sort of resurrection mechanic, that would be neat. Another thing thing I'd love to see is, since he was second in command at Muscle Tower, his attacks involve some of the goons from there, like he has a super where he fires a missile or rocket punch from Major Metallotron, or one where he uses Booyah to zap the opponent with some electricity, and for an ultimate, it can be from the filler where he tried to detonate the Android 8 bomb, but he just sticks the bomb to you instead. There you go, perfect moveset that requires making multiple character models. I'm sure they'll love that. On that topic, they could just make Major Metallotron and Booyah playable. Metallotron has rocket punches and mouth missiles. He'll be easy to make a moveset for. Booyah though, I've always just liked this dude. Just a Toriyama monster design that's invincible if it wasn't for the cold. Make him a bit more mobile and put him in the game. He could have electricity and tongue-to-hand combat. Number 4, the Lesser Shadow Dragons. When it comes to the final villain group of GT, the Shadow Dragons, we see games usually focus on the last 3 of that group, Ice, Nova, and Sin, the latter of which became Omega Shenron. They were the strongest, so it does make sense when roster space is limited. Sin was the only dragon included in Sparking Zero, but Nova was later added as DLC to Sparking Zero, and Ice was on Nova's power level and playable in both Xenoverse games, so I see him having a high possibility too. But for the dragons that were supposed to be the end of series villains for about a decade, I would love to see the lesser 4 playable that never get any video game representation. Even if their fights were short-lived, their concept of being born from the wishes on the Dragon Balls was cool enough for me to hand-wave any plot contrivances of main characters not fighting at full competency to make them seem like a threat. The 2 that are my favorites are Rage and Oceanus. Rage had the coolest gimmick to me, being his electric goo. He technically absorbs the electricity with it, but I could see Sparking Zero have him enter the battle with it all stocked up. He could make the goo stick to you and then electrocute you later on, which could be a projectile that detonates after being on the opponent. He could also have an electric zap beam that comes right from him, and as an ultimate, he could make a giant version of himself with the goo and just have it do kaiju things. He did bounce back a Kamehameha with it, but I don't see this game doing a projectile counter ultimate, so maybe he can just inexplicably bounce energy from it in a cutscene. For Oceanus, she would be in her Princess Oto form. Maybe there's fans of the dragon form out there, but the humanoid form is pretty and everyone loves it. She's a wind manipulator, which is a rather unique power for Dragon Ball. Her moveset was set up pretty quickly in her anime appearance. She has barriers, which is a common defensive move. She has a flurry of wind balls, which could be your standard energy volley super. She has her Hurricane, which cut up Goku pretty bad, so that could be a rush with a cutscene. And then she has a stronger Whirlwind with energy cuts, which only failed because Pan was free to attack her. Otherwise, I don't see how Goku was getting out of that, so there's her ultimate. As for the other 2 dragons, Naturion Shenron was a mole-like creature that grew and changed forms as he absorbed other characters, but I think you would just have his final form in the game as a giant character since there's no way he's getting multiple roster spots. The moveset at least writes itself though. Being Earth-themed, he can create an earthquake like one of those supers that erupts below the opponent. He also likes to burrow, so he can have one of those full power charge forward supers. And for the ultimate, he has a super Kamehameha since he absorbed Pan. It's exactly what it sounds like, but at least he can blast it out of his mouth, so that's neat. Finally, there's Haze Shenron, who is basically the joke character of the group since he only appeared intimidating when really a toe stub hurt him. But for the sake of the game, he can have enough stamina and moves to round out the Shadow Dragon roster. He's got Poison Mist, so maybe you can turn that into a projectile ball super or a spray that debuffs the opponent or tires them out briefly. And he has his ultimate all set, being his Mouth Beam, which had a pretty rainbow effect, so at least it will look nice when he does it. And there you go, that's how you get all the Shadow Dragons in the game. Will it ever happen? Well, you can't say they don't have enough moves. Number 3, Kami. I can't be the only one who wants to see Kami. Once the game started expanding to the OG Dragon Ball side of the cast, I think he had enough major fights to be included. Now, I'm not talking about Old Man Kami fighting, though it would be pretty cool seeing if he can move like Old Man King Piccolo and whack with his cane. But I was more thinking about when he took over the random audience member Shen to use as a disguise to enter the 23rd tournament. In this body, Kami was able to demonstrate the martial arts skills he never does otherwise, where he takes a mantis stance, or just does other cool looking punches or kicks that don't seem to have a style attached to them, but they sure pissed off Piccolo. The flips and gut punches made me want to see more of what it looks like when Kami fights. Also headbutts. When he had to pretend to be clumsy, the accidental head bash was his go-to. This could also be a cutscene super, since him accidentally skull bashing Yamcha in the nuts is sadly one of the most memorable Yamcha moments. Also, when he revealed that he was more than he appeared in the Piccolo fight, he does one of those demon wind blasts, which is a very cool maneuver. Could be one of those rising ground explosion supers. He allegedly couldn't use all of his strength and powers in the human body, but he had enough to make a moveset of with these fights. His strongest attack here was the Mafuba, which Sparking Zero has with Roshi now, so it could be his ultimate too. But if they wanted to drop the restricted powers in Shen's body limitation, just give him a few more of his skills, like the I-beams. Everyone loves I-beams. He also showed what his ultimate move could be in the Dead Zone movie with his self-destruction, which is a strategy for some characters in the game. So he could do the self-destruct for an ultimate where he emerges from the body briefly, and if he doesn't finish off the opponent, it leaves him with a little health left, and he just retreats back into Shen's body. Overall, I feel Kami gets overlooked a lot since he's normally standing at the lookout, but anyone who remembers this tournament arc knows he's got a full roster spot right there. Number 2, Kato Pesra and the rest of the Tournament of Power randos. In my initial video, I did an entry to include all the fighters from the original Dragon Ball tournament arcs, and I wanted to have a blanket statement to say, hey, let's do that with the Tournament of Power fighters. But with the Dragon Ball tournaments, that was just 7 fighters not in the main cast, 4 for the first tournament arc, 3 for the second, none for the third, and even if I expanded to the Buu tournament arcs, we were looking at maybe like 14 overall. That could be a rapid fire entry. Tournament of Power though, 80 fighters minus Universe 7 and most of Universe 6 who are already in the game, and the ones from the other universes that are also already in the game. I don't want to count all that, but we're looking at like 40 missing fighters, so I'm saying just put them all in the game and supplement any missing moves with full power energy wave and such. But I do want to highlight a few of my faves and fighters that I think are deserving. You could probably put all the remaining Pride Troopers in here. They have enough unique powers to make a full moveset for each, and they were in a highlighted fight. If you gotta team up some in a single moveset, go ahead, but I think we've seen more minor characters get their own slots. Ganos also feels like another snub. He has a lot of great skills that he used against Roshi, including electricity, which is always neat. He put him on the ropes and can transform if they want 2 characters out of him, so why not? And he's not to be confused with Theum, a different bird fighter who is unremarkable, but it's a bird wearing a wife beater who fires mouth blasts. There's something funny about that design. And why not put in the rest of the Trio de Danger too, and that goo guy that Goku is fighting. He always seemed neat. But for my favorite of the Tournament of Power randos, the guy who headlined this entry, Kato Pesra. How can this guy not be more popular? I know Dragon Ball has a share of tokusatsu parodies, but I love how he has all these different modes on his outfit, and he has a monologue for each one. No one even cares. He just does it and tends to get his ass beat. And he calls out Vegeta for interrupting him when doing his monologue, always a classic bit. His main thing is changing modes to increase speed or power, or speed and power at the same time, so I'm assuming they can all put this in one form. He can upgrade to these color changing forms with his blast ones similar to the Ginyu Force poses, and then you know, he's got super moves based on what he fought with in the anime. Punches, barreling forward, and his ultimate is already set up. Kato Pesra, the final mission! It's a big beam. It clashed with the final flash, so that's neat. However, I mainly want him for the monologues and poses, so the beam is just a secondary thing. For number 1, there wasn't a character I felt super strongly about to put here. My first list had all my best candidates where I would just put Launch, or Arale, or Anine, or Magetta here if I had repeated entries. But to keep in the spirit of suggesting obscure characters, let's throw a curveball with number 1, Neko Majin. After Dragon Ball ended its manga run, Toriyama would do an on and off series called Neko Majin starting in 1999, which which was about a character who, as the name implies, was a cat with Majin Buu-like features. He goes around being a mischievous little scamp. He swindles characters by stealing their vehicles and such, and then making them pay for it back, or giving characters a demon egg and then being the hero to clean up the mess that he caused for a fee, just with a lot of other gags along the way. I won't explain each joke, but I love this one about these aliens having a hostage, and Neko Majin casually talks with the aliens instead, only taking the tape off the hostage's face to ask to borrow her cell phone to call a mechanic, and then he puts the tape right back. As Toriyama continued the series, he created 2 more Neko Majin since they were a race. Mike was a standalone story, and the one they would likely put in Sparking Zero, Neko Majin Z, was the Dragon Ball heavy story that took place somewhere in a random part in the Dragon Ball universe. This Neko Majin encounters a Saiyan Onyo, who is working for Frieza's son Kuriza, who also lands on the planet he was inhabiting. Also, yes, there's a silly looking Saiyan, and Frieza has a son whose name is a pun on chestnut. You get used to it. When they all battle, it's pretty much a gag, then a fight move that's a gag, on and off for a few go-arounds. But he decks Kuriza enough if you want a rush super out of it, or any of the funny things. He also farts during this, which has the potential to be a stun move. When Vegeta joins the story, don't ask where this is meant to be in the timeline, it's when Neko, Onyo, and Kuriza are playing soccer, and Neko accidentally bicycle kicks Vegeta's pod into a crash landing, which could be a melee move or super for him. During their gag fight, Neko competes with Vegeta Super Saiyan by doing his own variant of Super Saiyan, giving him the potential for a transformation in the game to give him even more moves. And where do we get those moves from? Well, in the next chapter, Neko meets Majin Buu and Neko's rival Usa Majin, who's a bunny version of himself that could be an alternate costume in the game, and his evil plan is, he stole Neko's limited edition Dragon Box Goku figurine, so you gotta put that in his moveset somehow. We also learn he can concentrate all of his power into a ball that he can spit out, so, I don't know, make it a projectile. Finally, when Neko meets Goku, they have a spar that looks pretty standard until Goku pulls out a cat toy to distract Neko and wins. Find a way to implement that somehow in Neko's moveset. Maybe have Neko take out the cat toy instead. And of course, through all this, he has his Neko Hameha, which you could probably guess what that does. All in all, Neko Majin Z seems like a very fun addition to the roster that honors Toriyama and that dry period in the Dragon Ball franchise. Similar to how I wanted a Raleigh in this game because she represents another Toriyama manga and crossed over with the series, Neko Majin is the same, just Dragon Ball came to him instead of a Raleigh coming to Dragon Ball, which also came to her while still being in Dragon Ball, but you get the logic. With his gag manga powers, there's a lot of freedom to do whatever is most wacky, and power levels can just be whatever they need to be. So go forth and be the best cat you can be. Let's surprise the world with Neko Majin DLC. Now, what did you think? Were all these picks strange but feasible, or was I going too far in either direction of unlikely by suggesting them? And who are some of your favorite oddballs related to Dragon Ball that deserve a shot to be in Sparking Zero? Whether I discussed them or not, let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.